Did his stepmother really kill him? This chilling question sets the stage for our story on an ordinary day that spiraled into a parent's worst nightmare. It was June 4, 2010, in the city of Portland, Oregon. The day began with the lively chatter and excitement of Skyline Elementary School's annual science fair. It was there that a cheerful second grader named Kyron Horman showcased his research on red tree frogs. His stepmother, Terri Horman, was the one who dropped him off at school, watching him stride towards his classroom with infectious enthusiasm and his project in hand. It might have been a normal school day morning, but it was also the last time anyone would see Kyron Horman. As the day unfolded, parents arrived to pick their kids from school, and gradually the laughter and chatter faded, leaving the school grounds empty. But as hours passed, a terrible truth began to take shape. Kyron Horman came home from school that day. His family waited for him to bounce off the school bus, his cheeks flushed with the day's excitement, ready to share stories about the science fair and his friends. When the school bus arrived, Kyron wasn't on it. Panic started to creep in. Frantic calls were made, questions were asked, and the devastating truth was revealed. Kyron Horman, boy whose smile could light up a room, was nowhere to be found. This shocking news sent ripples through the community. How a child disappear from a school that was supposed to be their sanctuary? That fateful day in June, the school became the setting of an unimaginable. The police were alerted, and the search for Kyron Horman set in motion. Starting in the corridors of Skyline Elementary School, it widened to the nearby neighborhoods, and eventually, the entire city of Portland. It turned into one of the most extensive searches in the history of Oregon. Yet, as the days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, Kyron remained. The search for Kyron became one of the largest ever conducted in Oregon's history. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation into Kyron's disappearance took a baffling turn. The urgency of the initial search faded into a grim acceptance of the possibility that Kyron might not have just wandered off. The local community, law enforcement, and volunteers had combed through miles of terrain, leaving no stone unturned. Yet, all their efforts yielded no physical evidence of the missing child. The case transitioned from a missing persons report to a full-blown criminal investigation. The police were no longer just looking for a lost boy, they were hunting for a perpetrator. Their attention quickly turned to those closest to Kyron, and it wasn't long before the spotlight of suspicion fell on Terri Horman, Kyron's stepmother. Terri was the last person to see Kyron on the day he vanished. She had taken him to school that morning, attended his science fair, and even snapped a photo of him proudly standing next to his project. The timestamp on that photograph was the last known moment of Kyron's whereabouts. As investigators dug deeper into Terri's life, they discovered a myriad of puzzling behaviors. Her alibi for the day of Kyron's disappearance was inconsistent. She reportedly washed her truck, a key piece of potential evidence, on the day of Kyron's disappearance. And she even attempted to hire a landscaper to kill her husband, Kyron's father. Each new revelation about Terri's actions and behaviors added another layer of intrigue to the investigation. She became the focal point of the case, the individual whose actions were dissected, whose motives were questioned, and whose innocence was doubted. Yet despite the mounting evidence and public scrutiny, Terri vehemently maintained her innocence. The investigators, armed with suspicion but lacking concrete evidence, found themselves in a stalemate. The case, once hot with leads and tips, began to cool. As time passed, the investigation hit a wall. Despite the mounting suspicions, no arrests were made and the case went cold. In the throes of a missing child case, Kyron's stepmother, Terri Horman, found herself drowning in a sea of suspicion. The last known person to see him alive, Terri became of intense scrutiny as the investigation unfolded, with her every move dissected and analyzed. There were layers to this suspicion. Terri was reported had failed not only one but 2 polygraph tests. These lie detection tests threw the spotlight on Terri, even though she vehemently proclaimed her innocence. The murmurs, the whispers, the allegations, they formed a web of suspicion that entangled her, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. But the story didn't end there. Beyond these startling revelations, Terri's own behavior in the aftermath of Kyron's disappearance raised eyebrows. Some described it as unusual, not what one would expect of a grieving stepmother. She was seen as detached, aloof, and for some, her calm demeanor in such an emotionally charged situation, unsettling. However, one must not forget that Terri was dealing with her own battles on the home front. She was grappling with postpartum depression, trying to steer her own mental health in troubled waters, all while dealing with the of her stepson. Could her mental health have influenced reactions? Maybe. It certainly made her an easy target for suspicion. Yet in the face of all these allegations, Terri was never found guilty. Despite the whispers and rumors, the failed lie detector tests, and her strange behavior, none of these amounted to solid evidence. None could conclusively link her to Kyron's disappearance. Throughout this ordeal, Terri made numerous attempts to clear her name. She faced public scrutiny with resilience, even when the pressure seemed unbearable. The impact of the case on her life was enormous. It strained her relationships and subjected her to relentless public judgment. Yet, she held on. And despite the cloud of suspicion over her, Terri was never legally branded a criminal. Behind the headlines, a family was torn apart. The Horman family, once a picture of normalcy, was thrust into a nightmare with the disappearance of Kyron. The dynamics of this family, like the threads of a tightly woven fabric, began to fray under the strain of the investigation. Kyron's parents, Kane and Desiree, were already divorced at the time of his disappearance. The stress of the situation only served to widen the chasm between them. Desiree, Kyron's biological mother, was living in Medford, Oregon, over 300 miles away from her son, who stayed with his father and stepmother, Terri, in Portland. This geographical divide was dwarfed by the emotional distance that grew as the case unfolded. Kyron's relationship with his stepmother, Terri, was complex. Terri, who had been a constant presence in Kyron's life for several years, was now the prime suspect in his disappearance. This suspicion cast a dark shadow over their previously unassuming relationship. Terri was the last person to see Kyron on the day he vanished. She was heavily scrutinized by the public, her every action dissected and analyzed. This intense scrutiny, coupled with the suspicion from law enforcement, put Terri in an untenable situation. The strain of the case also took a toll on Kane and Terri's marriage. Terri's alleged involvement in Kyron's disappearance led to a public falling out between the couple. Kane filed for divorce and a restraining order against Terri, citing fears for his own safety and that of their young daughter. This public fracture of their marriage added another layer of pain to an already agonizing situation. The accusations against Terri were not just confined to law enforcement and the courts. They were played out in the court of public opinion, where she was often vilified. This public scrutiny added to the strain on a family already grappling with the unimaginable. A family left in limbo, their lives forever marred by the disappearance of Kyron. More than a decade has passed, and the mystery of Kyron Horman's disappearance remains unsolved. Despite the passage of time, the case continues to perplex investigators and captivate the public. The whereabouts of the young boy, who vanished without a trace from his school in Portland, Oregon, remain unknown, and yet, the flame of hope continues to burn brightly in the hearts of those who loved him. Kyron's parents, Desiree Young and Kane Horman, have never given up their relentless pursuit of truth and justice. They continue to hold out hope, organizing searches, spreading awareness, and keeping Kyron's name alive in the public consciousness. Their tireless efforts serve as a beacon of hope, a testament to the unyielding power of a parent's love. The public's interest in the case has never waned. People from all walks of life, from true crime enthusiasts to everyday citizens, remain fascinated by the story. Theories continue to circulate on internet forums and social media platforms, each one attempting to piece together the puzzle of Kyron's disappearance. Some theories point to Terri Horman, Kyron's stepmother, as the prime suspect. They cite her strange behavior following Kyron's disappearance and her alleged motive, fueled by postpartum depression and a desire to harm her then-husband. Yet, without concrete evidence, these theories remain speculative, adding to the cloud of uncertainty that surrounds the case. Other theories suggest that Kyron may have been abducted by a stranger, or even wandered off on his own. However, these theories, like the ones implicating Terri, lack definitive proof. They serve as grim reminders of the myriad possibilities that could explain Kyron's tragic disappearance. Despite the unanswered questions and the lack of closure, the case of Kyron Horman remains a poignant symbol of the countless children who go missing each year, their stories left unfinished, their fates unknown. It's a chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the vulnerability of our children. As the mystery lingers, the search for Kyron Horman continues, a haunting reminder of a day that began like any other. As we move forward, we carry with us the hope that one day the truth will be uncovered and justice will be served.